Hey, this is Mrs. Reichelt, and next up we're going to talk about hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis is basically blood cell formation. And on the last video, we really finished up by talking about hematopoiesis. So hemocytoblasts are the stem cells. You're going to need to know that. It's a stem cell. It's not a true stem cell because it's not able to differentiate into anything other than what's listed right here. But it can either differentiate into lymphoid stem cells or the myeloid stem cells, and then further differentiate into the other types of formed elements. So the formation of erythrocytes, basically you have your red blood cells, which is those biconcave discs, and in those biconcave discs you'll see that they lack a nucleus. This ends up being a really big deal. It is beneficial to not have a nucleus because it allows you to carry more oxygen on each red blood cell, but it ends up being a detriment because cells don't live forever. Because those cells are unable to, because they don't have a nucleus, they're unable to divide. They're unable to grow or synthesize new proteins. Red blood cells wear out in between 100 to 120 days, at which point they are eliminated by the phagocytes in your spleen or your liver, and your liver. Those lost cells are then replaced by the division of the hemocytoblasts, which are the stem cells, in the red bone marrow. So basically, erythrocyte production is going to be controlled by hormones. The hormone is going to be called the erythropoietin. This hormone is produced by the kidneys, so erythropoietin is produced by the kidneys, and it's going to basically increase red blood cell production in a response to lowered oxygen levels in the blood. Homeostasis is maintained by a negative feedback loop, and we will go through that basically right now. So if you have normal blood oxygen levels, you're going to be in homeostasis. Everything is fine. But what happens is maybe you all of a sudden have a decreased amount of oxygen getting to your tissues. So the stimulus is that there's a decreased amount of oxygen decreased amount of oxygen to your blood, or it could be an increased tissue demand. Increased tissue demand for oxygen would be something like if you were playing a new sport, maybe it's basketball season and you haven't been playing basketball for a while and conditioning is really, really hard, you're going to be sore for a couple of days. The reason that you're sore is that your tissues are not meeting the oxygen demands, or your body is not meeting the oxygen demands of your tissues. So you're sore for a couple of days, but in that time period your muscles will heal, as well as you're going to increase your red blood cell production. That way you can carry more oxygen to your body tissues to undergo aerobic respiration for a longer period of time. So the next step here is you have a reduced level in blood. Once we have that reduced level of blood, the kidneys then are going to release erythropoietin. Kidneys are going to get that stimulus most likely from the brain. So the brain is going to sense that there's a reduced oxygen, and then the kidneys will release that erythropoietin. Then erythropoietin is going to stimulate red bone marrow, which basically is in this part of your bone, maybe not this part, this is kind of the spongy part, but in the diaphysis of your bone, red bone marrow is going to produce red blood cells. Then you're going to make those red blood cells, and then ultimately it'll increase your oxygen carrying ability, which will put you back in homeostatic balance. So the formation of white blood cells and platelets are controlled by hormones. They're not all erythropoietin, that's just the one that we use today, but they're also controlled by colony-stimulating factors and interleukins that prompt bone marrow to generate leukocytes. So this would be not necessarily red blood cell production, but white blood cell production. And then thrombopoietin stimulates the production of platelets, and we'll actually talk about that when we go through our blood clotting processes.